fellow collectors, and welcome to Long's Toys. Today we are taking a look at the Kamen Rider Geats Magnum Boost set from the Revolve change figure line. Pretty excited for this one. Obviously, I've been having a lot of fun with Geats, so definitely been craving some action figures from the show. Basically, your options are either this or Soto, and I did get my Soto set in recently as well, but that takes time to put together, so once that's done, maybe I'll do a comparison between the two. But yeah, I think this is going to be really fun. Obviously, if you've been watching the show, you know that they have the ability to use the buckles on either side of the driver, and then even while they're both equipped, they can kind of do a quick change where they flip what's on the top to the bottom and vice versa. So I think this should be fun. Hopefully these figures are pretty cool. You can have either Magnum Boost or Boost Magnum. So we have a picture of either configuration on the two sides. Not really much going on the bottom here, just your standard warnings and whatnot. And then, of course, this shows how it spins over here on the top. So it looks like you won't be able to do any blank forms because the armor doesn't actually come off. They just kind of transform from one configuration to the other. But we are getting a blank piece with the bike that's coming out later this month. And then you'll be able to make more possible combinations as shown here. So that should be pretty cool. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead, get everything out of the box here, and we'll take a closer look. So here are the two halves exactly as they come in the box. They both kind of come in the upper torso mode. So we have our Magnum half, we have our Boost half. We also, of course, have a few other accessories. We have the Geats helmet, which looks pretty good. It's very nicely painted there. We also have our little scarf piece. And then we have the Magnum Shooter 40X. Now this doesn't have any paint on it, which is a bit of a bummer, but it does have the ability to change back and forth between the two modes. Very simply, that piece just kind of flips back or flips forward. So I appreciate that. It also has a peg on the side so you can mount it onto the belt. So if I just show this off real quick, we have a peg hole on the side here. And you can just go ahead and simply peg that on. And that looks pretty good. And once the pants are connected, you'll have another port on this side as well. So whichever side you would like. But yeah, so pretty cool accessories there. So let's go ahead. We will start with Magnum on top and Boost as the pants. So I'll show you how this works. So you kind of just want to start by lifting the arms up just to kind of get them out of the way. And then you can see that there is a connection port right here. And then there's kind of an empty space right above it. So when you flip these up like this, they will just connect right into each other. And they snap together pretty well. Now the first thing you're going to do is take the head assembly from Boost and unpeg that from the back here, and then this is just going to come up and snap onto the back, and that kind of locks the two halves together, and it works pretty well. I feel like it stays pretty securely, which is nice. Now for the head, you're just going to kind of tuck it as much as you can, and it sticks back there pretty well. It's not really hanging out too bad, but I mean, there's going to be some kibble on the back. It's not the worst, it's not the best. I feel like they tried to tuck it up as much as they could, but there's only so much you can do. At this point, you're going to kind of bring the legs out a little bit, and the two kind of chest panels here will kind of rotate out to the side. Just like that. And then the shoulder pads will kind of become the new knee pads. And then you're going to rotate this to the side, and then just flip the hand up on the ball joint to now become the foot. And then you can kind of rock these back a little bit. But you can see that was pretty simple. And we have our action figure here now. The only thing he's missing are a few little accents. So we have the Geats helmet. Now, unfortunately, this is like my major problem with this figure. It just doesn't hook on very easily. There's a very tiny little plastic tab on the inside. You can probably see it right there. It's a super tiny little clear plastic tab. And that has to kind of like hook into the bottom of this section. So there's this whole kind of like, I don't even know what shape you'd call that. Not quite a pentagon. And it has to kind of hook into this bottom area of this like ledge and then flip over top. But unfortunately, there's not really a great way to like connect it to the front. I find it's easier to just pop the head off the ball joint and then try to connect it this way. So if you can clip it on there and then bring this down. And it stays fairly well, but I wish there was something in the front that it clicked onto. And maybe there is, and I'm just not doing it right, but I really have been looking around, and I can't seem to find anything. That's fairly decent. And then we can just go ahead and pop this back on the ball joint here. There we go. Then we have a little spot over here. Right there, there's a tab, and that's where this little tab for the scarf is going to go. And it's kind of funny because they have a piece that makes it look like the scarf is connected up here behind his neck where it should be. But there was really just no way for them to do that because the way this thing transforms. Now, the other thing is, because of the way this piece is just kind of, there's nothing to push it into. So sometimes I find it better to just kind of like have something to like grab a hold of that piece of plastic so that I can push it all the way in so that it stays. Let me zoom out here. So for the most part, we have Geats Magnum Boost. And we can go ahead and give him his gun. And he looks pretty good. Honestly, I think this is pretty decent. Because the legs also have to be arms, they have a ton more articulation points than you would expect. So you have the usual hip. You can kick out to the side. You can kick forward. You do have a thigh swivel, but because of the way this panel is, like this kind of butt piece is always going to be here, so you have to like move the thighs, but know that this is always going to hang back there, so don't try to move the whole thigh, it's just this piece. And then you have the shoulders, which were kind of a like swivel ball joint, and I'll show that off in a minute when I get back up to the actual shoulders, but there's like a ball joint here as well as a swivel. And so you get great range of motion for knees. But that's also kind of above the knees, like if you feel like this is the kneecap. And then you have a swivel below that, which, you know, humans don't have. And then you have like a secondary knee, so you can do all kinds of crazy, like he can literally kick himself in the front of the thigh. It's kind of nuts. And then you have the ball joint down here for the ankle. So because of how this works, the whole, you know, premise of the line, the legs just have more articulation than they should. And as a result, sometimes it's a little weird to pose him or to get him to stand properly. But that's not really anything they could do about that because you need the points of articulation for the torso. So speaking of which, you have the head on a ball joint. The neck can move at the base of kind of the neck, and then there's like a ball joint at the base of the skull. And then again, the helmet just kind of came off. So I showed you this ball joint when I was trying to put the helmet on. And then there's also that movement because you have this joint here. So if you think about it like this, it's this joint and then it's this joint here. So you have a nice range of motion there in the head and neck. Like I said before, there's a ball joint here where it's connected to the torso. So you can move that up and down. And then you have you can use that as a swivel as well. And then there's also kind of like a hinge. So you have that whole range of motion there. You have the bicep swivel. You have the elbow, and then you have like the wrist, which I guess you could swivel side to side, but there's not really a reason to have him do that, but you can because it's also a foot. So, like I said, it's good. There's a lot of articulation. Like, the lack of articulation is not the problem. It's almost that there's too much articulation. I wish there was a way to lock certain joints for the leg mode, and I don't really know how they would accomplish that, but that would help because it makes him not floppy, but just kind of like harder to pose and get balance in this fully transformed mode here. So let me see what I can do. Just have to kind of find a balance spot. There we go. But like I said, I think it looks good. I mean, it's nicely painted. I love having the gun. We can flip that into either mode, which is nice. Like I said, you can peg it onto either side. The driver doesn't have a ton of paint, but it's got the kind of gold ring that goes around. Obviously, each half is a different color to match the rest of the body. And they've molded the handles correctly, so that looks pretty good. Honestly, I like it. I just wish... My only two complaints are that the pants tend to be a little unstable because of how many articulation points they have. Which, again, I don't really know how they would combat. And the helmet just doesn't stay on all that well. But one thing that is kind of cool, these are 6-inch figures. So you can see that they're pretty much the same size there. So these should scale with Lightning Collection. So if you wanted to do a Rider Sentai team-up, you could do that. Because they are 6-inch figures. In the past, these figures are usually like 5-inch or so. But this is definitely a full-on 6-inch figure here. So he looks good. Aesthetically, I think he looks good. He's got a tiny little bit of kibble on the back, but that's not that big a deal. I think he looks pretty good. But of course, we're not done. We have to do the alternate configuration. So we'll go ahead and take the gun out of his hand. We will remove the helmet. And we will remove the scarf piece. So again, we're going to kind of want to just move some stuff off to the side. We're going to not detach this section, but pull off the Magnum head section as well, which can be a little easier said than done. Well, it came apart anyway, but there we go. Let's put this back together. So we want that to stay together. You can pull the other head out. And then we're just going to flip it upside down. So we're going to take these sections and rotate them in, because we have to put the two chest panels together again. And then this is going to rotate down and become our shoulder pads. And then this is going to come up, and there are two pegs, as you can see, and there are two peg spots right here and here. So this is going to come up and peg into those. Sure, as long as I line everything up. And it's pretty secure. Like I said, it really does peg in pretty well. And then we're going to just take the Magnum head and tuck that up as we did with the boost head. And then you just kind of start straightening stuff out. So you have the shoulder here. You're going to rotate this for the bicep. So rotate the bicep. You're going to come down here and basically do the same thing we did to boost, where you're going to kind of swing these panels out to the side to come like thigh panels. So we'll swing that. The shoulder pads are going to become knee pads now. And then we have to swing this out to the side to become knees, and then flip up the feet. So it's pretty intuitive. I mean, there's not really like, oh, I have to read the instructions and it's super complicated. It's just a lot of swiveling to make sure that the joints line up in a way that makes sense. And then we can take the scarf piece and put this back on. Make sure I can grab a hold of that. There we go. And then, unfortunately, the helmet doesn't really work any better over on this side, but get it on as best we can. And there we go. We have our Boost Magnum. We can give him the gun back. So I think that's pretty cool. I mean, it can be a pretty quick little change. Like, it really doesn't... Oh, it does have waist articulation. I forgot to mention that. So when this is all connected in, you know, the other half of the waist doesn't work, but the waist underneath the driver works. So I think that makes sense. That's a good way of doing it. But yeah, it's a pretty quick little change. I don't think it's that difficult. It's pretty intuitive. It's really just kind of taking these thigh panels, rotating them inward to become the new chest, swinging the arms down, and then when you flip them upside down, you do the opposite. You swing the panels out to the side, and then line everything up to get your knee joints and your second shin knee joints. See, I wish there was kind of a way, like this is the knee, and then like lock these in place for a little bit of stability. Oh, and I did forget to show off that in the Magnum mode, he does have those side panels. So these would be normally his arms, and you can have those little guns on the side pop out. They do have that. I forgot to show that off. But yeah, it's pretty cool. Like I said, I think it's a fun gimmick. It works fairly well. I just wish, you know, the legs were a little bit more stable, but other than that, it's a fun little gimmick. So like I said, I'll have to see. I think Soto's going to be a little bit better at achieving this just because of the way that their pieces kind of all peg into each other. I think it's going to be a little bit more stable. And I think the helmets are going to peg in a lot easier as well. So we'll see how that goes. But if you're looking for something in kind of the closer to 6-inch range, you know, I think this is a pretty fun little line. I'm definitely going to get the bike so I can have a kind of blank, so that way we can do, you know, just one form at a time. Also, there is a Ninja and Zombies set. So that is, I have that pre-ordered as well. So hopefully this line doesn't die out super early like the Revice line did. We'll see how it goes. But yeah, so far I'm pretty happy with it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. And as always, thanks so much for watching.